Hello, Andrew.
I
Nice
know.
to have you on a Literature Live evening. You tell us how you wrote this book on Freda Bedi, how it came about, and what what ground it covers.
Well, uh, I first came across Freda Bedi. This is her
Yeah.
when she was in Lahore. This is the picture on the cover in the 1940s. I first came across her maybe 15 years ago when I was doing some research and eventually wrote a book about Kashmir in the 1940s. And she spent a lot of time in Kashmir. She was very active in Sheikh Abdullah's Kashmiri nationalist movement. She was a left-wing activist. And I met veterans of that movement who would talk about this beautiful English woman who dressed in Kashmiri style, spoke some Urdu, had a little baby, Kabir Bedi, and got very involved in their movement, to the extent that at one point she actually wore a burqa to be able to deliver messages to the underground activists incognito. I mean, whether she was fully incognito, wearing the burqa, she was rather tall for Kashmir standards. So that got me interested. And then I had a conversation with a publisher, Ravi Singh, at Speaking Tiger, who, when he was at Penguin, published my Kashmir book. And he said he wanted to do a series on Indian lives, but he wanted to challenge the conventional idea of what it is to be Indian. And he asked me whether I had any ideas for subjects. And I said, Freda Bedi. And he'd heard of Freda, and he said, yeah, okay. And then he said, I think I might know somebody who might write that. And I said, yes, you do. My idea. I'll do it. And that was about 4 years ago. And I've had a huge amount of help from all the family. There's a very rich archive of documents. Kabir has documents and photographs. So does his older brother, Ranga. There are actually, rather magically, there's tape recordings that Freda made towards the end of her life. And then there's archive material. I've accessed archives in 3 continents. Indeed, you could say 4, because I have some material in South Africa, not that I went there. And Freda was a remarkable woman. She was born in a non-privileged family in Derby, in the north of England. Against the odds, she got to Oxford University. This is 1929. There, she was a left-wing student, and she met Indian students and went to meetings of the Indian Student Society, the Majlis, and of the Communist October Club. And at both, she met this very handsome, big, sporty Punjabi guy, Baba Pyarelal Bedi. And there was a sort of intellectual companionship between the two of them, and that developed into a romance. But this was really a social taboo at that time. She says, until then, no Oxford woman undergraduate had married an Indian fellow student at Oxford. She was disciplined by her college, but went ahead, and when they finished their exams, they married in the registry office at Oxford. But the registrar who married them refused to shake their hands after he'd married them, which is a sign of the sense of social disapproval. But she, as soon as she married BPL, she saw herself as Indian. She'd never been to India. It was another year before she went to India, but she dressed in Indian clothes, either in salwar kameez or sometimes in a sari. And later on in her life, when they moved to Lahore, she worked as a journalist, but she was also very involved in Indian nationalism. She was jailed by the British during the Second World War as a satyagrahi. Her husband was basically interned as a communist. Then they went to Kashmir, where, among other things, she enrolled in a left-wing women's militia. In the 1950s, she became involved in Buddhism. In the late 1950s, she was a great networker. Her friend, Jawaharlal Nehru, agreed to send her to Assam to improve the facilities in the camps for Tibetan Buddhists who were following the Dalai Lama across the Himalayas. She became completely won over by Tibetan Buddhism, the spirituality and the people. And eventually she became a Tibetan Buddhist nun and took not just the novice ordination, but the full ordination, and was quite possibly the first woman, not Western woman, simply woman, in the Tibetan tradition who took full ordination as a nun. So it was a remarkable life. She also had an Indian passport. She saw herself very clearly as Indian. And I was intrigued both by the various different episodes of her life and very much by the way in which she would not be constrained by borders of race, religion, nationality, and indeed gender. And the more I found out about her, I didn't want to do a saint's life. She did things which hurt some of her family, but I really came to admire the way in which she reinvented herself without repudiating her past.
That's wonderful. And that's all in this book, The Lives of Freda by Andrew Whitehead. Thank you.
Thank you.